Hello everybody. You guys may remember recently I did an install and first impressions review of Manjaro Linux, which is an Arch-based Linux distribution, a user-friendly Arch-based Linux distribution. And I had people request that I also do the same install and first impression review of Antergos, another user-friendly Arch-based Linux distro that follows, the rolling release model that Arch Linux does. So that is exactly what I'm going to do today. So we're going to go to the Distro Watch page here, and you will see that Antergos here in their page hit rankings is currently ranked number 5 in the Distro Watch rankings, for what that's worth. The page hit rankings on Distro Watch are actually not a very good metric for measuring Linux distro popularity, but a lot of people use them, so that's why I wanted to pull it up and show it to you. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Antergos Distro Watch page here and get a little more information. And looks like Antergos.com is the website, the official Antergos website. According to Distro Watch, Antergos is a modern, elegant, and powerful operating system based on Arch Linux. It started life under the name CinArch. I remember CinArch. It was a Arch distro, Arch-based distribution that used Cinnamon as their default desktop. So I guess it's a continuation of the old CinArch distro. And desktops available. It looks like we can install Cinnamon, GNOME, KDE, Mate, OpenBox, and XFCE. So we have several desktop environments that we could install. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the Antergos homepage. Alright, I'm going to click on the tab at the top of the Antergos homepage to go ahead and try to download an ISO so we can get our install started. And near the bottom of the page we have this latest install media tab here, and I can do the Antergos Live ISO, which I'm assuming will include a live desktop environment that we can boot into to test Antergos out without having to install it. They also have this Antergos Minimal ISO, and I think that's the one I'm going to download. Let's go ahead and do the minimal install. Okay, I have downloaded the Antergos Minimal ISO, and I'm going to go ahead and install Antergos inside a virtual machine. So I'm using VirtualBox. Let me go ahead and fire it up. Alright, VirtualBox wants to capture my mouse and keyboard. So we have the options of booting from hard disk, start Antergos Live, which I'm assuming boots us into a live environment, and non-graphical boot. I'm going to choose the second option, start Antergos Live, and see what happens with that. Much like my Manjaro Linux review, that was the very first time I'd ever used Manjaro. I've never used Antergos, so I have no idea what the install is going to entail. So maybe a very simple, straightforward install, or maybe not. I'm not sure. So let's see what we get. So we boot into this little live environment here. I'm not sure what desktop environment this is, but it's very minimal. Looks like I have a power button. We have a terminal icon here, so I could get to a terminal if I needed to. Network connections. So we're connected to the internet. And it looks like this little greeter here is the installer. It's asking me about language, so I'm going to go ahead and run through all of this. So for language, it's already chosen English, that's correct. For best practices, or for best results, please ensure your computer has 8 gigs of space. This virtual machine I have set for 15 gigs of space, so I have plenty of space to install Antergos. Plugged into a power source, yes. Connected to the internet, yes. CNCHI is up to date. I'm assuming that's their package installer. There are no temporary packaging issues that would interfere with this installation, and that's checked, so everything looks good. Alright, now since we had English chosen as our language, it wants to know which English. Not all English is the same. I want United States English. And it has correctly chosen the central time zone here in the US as my time zone. This is something that in my review of Manjaro failed to pick up my correct time zone. It had New York, the Eastern time zone, as my time zone, which was incorrect. But Antergos correctly chose the central time zone here in the US as my time zone. So good job, Antergos. Keyboard layout, English, US, and it has a field that I could test out things, so everything seems to be in order there. Now we have our choice of which desktop environment to install. Now with Manjaro, I chose their KDE edition to play around with. I think I'll do something different in Antergos. So I really don't know anything about the Cinnamon desktop. I've never run it. I know the Cinnamon desktop was created by the Linux Mint team. I've never installed Linux Mint on a machine, so I've never really played with Cinnamon. So, and I know Antergos started life as CinArch, primarily an Arch-based Linux distribution built around Cinnamon, so I'm going to choose the Cinnamon desktop. I think that would be kind of cool. And do we want to enable the Arch user repository? Now this is an extra repository that you can enable to get more software availability on Arch and Arch-based distros. I am going to enable that. Bluetooth support, I don't really need it in this virtual machine. Do I want Firefox web browser? Yeah, I like Firefox. Do I want Flash plugins? Why not? Even though I may not use it much in this virtual machine, if this was an actual install, you probably want Flash plugins installed on your system. Do I want the long-term support release of the kernel? Not necessarily. Do I want LibreOffice? If this was my actual machine, yeah, I like the LibreOffice suite, but to save space on this virtual machine, I'm not going to install LibreOffice. I won't be using it. So we'll continue from here. It warns me that enabling the Arch user repository is a bit dangerous. It's a collection of user-submitted package builds that supplement software available from the official repository. So the Arch user repository is not Arch's official repository. Arch users submit these package builds. So are they completely trustworthy? Well, I've never found one that had malicious intent, but you know, just to be safe, Arch has this disclaimer. So alright, installation. Here we get to the disks and the partitioning. I'm in a virtual machine, so I'm going to erase disk and give Antergos the entire disk to install on. So I'm just going to continue with this. Then I get a warning that we're about to format the disk and write to it, which of course is what we want to do. Select the drive. It has selected a 16 gigabyte drive, this virtual drive in this virtual machine. Use the device below for bootloader installation. Yeah, okay, that's fine. And we come to this review page, reviewing basically everything we'd chosen before. Location, English, US, United States, time zone, United States, Chicago, keyboard, layout, US, desktop environment, Cinnamon, some of the software we told it to install, and the partitioning. So it looks like we're going to create a swap. By default, I didn't play around with the partitioning, but we're going to have a swap. Our root partition, a boot partition. I'm just going to let it do its thing. I'm not going to mess around with the partitioning. Am I sure I really want to continue? Now when I choose yes here, the installation will start. So there's no coming back from this. If this was a real machine, it's about to format the hard drive. So Username. I'm just gonna go with Antergos. Computer name, yeah, Antergos. I'll do Antergos-PC. And Antergos. Password. I'm going to give it a simple password. It doesn't like that I chose a weak password, but it didn't give me too much of a hassle about it. And it's looks like the install has started. I'm not sure how long it'll take. It may be a few minutes. I may pause the recording here until the installation has completed. But from what we ran through there, this little graphical installer here was very straightforward. I'm pretty impressed with the installer. So I'm going to pause the video. I'll come back after everything is finished installing. Okay, the installer has been running for about 5 or 6 minutes. Looks like it's about 80% of the way done, so the installation is going quickly. Okay, the installation's been running for, I don't know, about 8, 9, maybe 10 minutes. Looks like it's getting close to being done. It has about 839 packages that have to be installed, and it's already installed more than 750 of them, so just another minute or two and I think the install will be done. Alright, looks like it took about 10, maybe 12 minutes for the installation to complete, and now it's asking me to reboot my system. So that was a pretty good installer. I like this CNCHI installer. I think earlier I actually misspoke and said it was their package manager. This CNCHI installer, pretty nice graphical installer. So I'm going to pause the video for a second and reboot the machine. Okay, so we're rebooting our machine, the virtual machine here, and we're going to load up our freshly installed Antergos Linux. This should be fun. Again, I've never used Antergos, but I'm pretty excited to see what it's all about. Also, I don't know much about the Cinnamon desktop, so I may fumble around in it a bit, but looks like we're at our login screen. Now this login screen, I don't see where I log in here. I have Antergos, welcome, Antergos PC, which is the name of this PC. I have an arrow next to the time. Okay, and then it brings up my username, which I chose was Antergos. Now I type in my password, and this should log us into the Cinnamon desktop environment. Just wait for it to load up. As always, things take a little longer to load up inside a virtual machine than they would on physical hardware. And at the top I've got running in software rendering mode. Cinnamon is currently running without video hardware acceleration, and as a result you may observe much higher than normal CPU usage. There could be a problem with your drivers, yada yada yada. I'm sure it's gonna require me to install some guest editions inside VirtualBox to get all the nice graphical, goodness out of Cinnamon. I'm not going to bother doing that though. Let's just play around a little bit. Let's go to the menu here in Cinnamon and see what is installed by default on Antergos. So under the accessories category, we have our archive manager, we have a calculator, we have a disk utility, fonts, the Hewlett-Packard device manager for our printer. We have Nemo. Now Nemo, and it's got a file icon. I think this is Cinnamon's file manager. Yeah, okay. So instead of, GNOME has Nautilus, KDE has Dolphin, looks like Cinnamon has Nemo for a file manager. Actually, this is an attractive file manager. It actually kind of reminds me of Dolphin in a lot of ways. But I'm going to close that out. Continuing on through accessories, we have a screenshot app. We have the text editor, and we have virtual keyboard. The text editor, let's see what text editor they're using. I would assume it is gedit, but I'm not positive on that. Well, let's go to the menu here, About, and it is gedit. So they're using the standard text editor that GNOME uses. Alright, under graphics we have our document viewer, for viewing PDF files, image viewer, and photos. I'm not sure what photos is. Let's click that, see what application loads up. Not sure what program this is. It is called Photos. So this is it's GNOME's Photos. Alright, so they're using a lot of GNOME apps here in Cinnamon. Alright, under Internet, looks like we have both Chromium and Firefox installed for browsers. I'm not sure why they installed both of them. I think they should just install one to save on space, and people can always install and uninstall the one they don't want. We have the Transmission BitTorrent client, which is GNOME's BitTorrent client. Under Office, we don't have anything other than, again, our document viewer. So no LibreOffice installed, but I could have chosen to install the LibreOffice suite. If you remember, in the installer it gave me that option to save on disk space here in this 15 gig virtual machine. I didn't want to take up a lot of disk space installing the full LibreOffice suite, but that is an option. Programming, we have CMake. Sound and video, we have the Brasero disk burning utility. That is one of GNOME's disk burning utilities. We have music. Not sure what music is. Again, GNOME is renaming a lot of their programs, so I'm assuming this is one of the GNOME utilities. Yeah, music is a GNOME music player. I guess GNOME is renaming all of their stuff to these simple names, for new users, so they know music is what you use to play music. But for old-time Linux users, it's kind of confusing when they start renaming all their programs. Pulse Audio, Videos, which used to be called Totem, now GNOME calls it Videos. Under Administration, we have our Add and Remove software program. We have a decomp editor, manage printers, print settings, software updater, system monitor. We have our terminal, users and groups. I'm going to click the Add Remove software. Let's see what software installer they've included here, what graphical installers. And this is PAMAC. Not exactly sure how they pronounce that, but this is their graphical way of adding and removing software. Looks pretty straightforward. You have your categories for software here. Yeah, and then at the top you have tabs for repositories, installed, updates. Pretty standard stuff, I think. Under Preferences, we have accessibility. I'm sure for those with disabilities running Antergos. Account details, Adobe Flash Player. Now we told the installer to install Flash, so applets, backgrounds, date, time, desklets, desktop, effects, extensions, fonts, yada yada yada. A lot of configuration for the desktop. And then the Places category here is basically our directory structure here, our home folder. Inside it we have documents, music, pictures, videos, and downloads folders. So I'm going to go to Preferences just to play around a bit, because this is a nice default wallpaper, but it's kind of plain. It definitely was not as cool as that Manjaro KDE wallpaper that I really loved. So I'm going to see what other wallpapers are an option. They include a lot of really gorgeous wallpapers here. Now, since the Cinnamon taskbar, the theme at the bottom is black, I think I want to choose a lighter picture to contrast it. So Maybe something like this one. Okay, that looks pretty cool. How about something in a light green? Yeah, that's not bad either. White Line is the name of this one. That's pretty cool too. You know what? Let's do something a little more black and white. Yeah, I like that. So what am I going to do with this installation of Antergos running the Cinnamon desktop environment? I think I'm going to do the exact same thing I'm doing with Manjaro KDE. I'm going to keep it updated. I'm going to run it for a few weeks, for a few months. Today was just running through the install and just a very brief first impression look at Antergos Cinnamon. But I'm going to revisit it. I'm going to have future videos after running it for some weeks, maybe some months. I'm going to keep the system updated. I'm going to report on any breakages, if there are any hiccups along the way. And so far, though, this was as straightforward as Manjaro. I had heard that Manjaro was the easier of these two distros to get installed and play around in, but the Antergos installer was just as easy as the Manjaro installer. And all in all, I like what I've seen so far. So, peace.